So my talk is spiritual, religious, and existential aspects of care for spiritual care generalists. It was previously called spiritual assessment, but it's so much bigger than that. We are going to talk about assessment, but we're going to talk about the whole domain. You already heard about me. Thank you, Helen. And the views expressed are our own, my own. If you share your views, they're yours. And they do not express the views or opinions of our employer, Stanford Healthcare, or wherever you are today. I learned from my meditation teacher how to make things sacred from a Buddhist perspective. So any practice, which is anything you do with intention and attention, the way to make it sacred is to make offerings, to request blessings, and to dedicate the merit. So today, I consider this a spiritual practice, this conversation we're having together. And I have an altar set up on my desk right next to me. If you were in the room with me, you could see this, the flowers that are here, some chocolate, a piece of poetry, a heart for courage, a reminder of abundance, and a Christian icon styled of the St. Harvey Milk of San Francisco. And one of the people who taught me to do this is Trudy James. And I'm dedicating this talk to her. She's my spiritual friend and an inner spiritual interfaith speaking and listening retreat co-facilitator and teacher, leader. Trudy is currently consciously in the last days of her life. And on Sunday, I'm going to be traveling north to Washington State to participate in saying goodbye to her at her living memorial before she takes advantage of the Death with Dignity Act. She's living with really aggressive cancer in a very loving and conscious way. And because this talk is for spiritual care generalists, I also want to dedicate this talk to all of my beloved palliative care interdisciplinary teammates, current and past, all the spiritual care generalists on the call, all of you. I love offering spiritual care with you. This is something we do together, and you all make me a better spiritual care specialist. Thank you for helping me discover new understandings of myself and this specialty, and for walking with me into the yet unknowns of the inner worlds of our patients, our loved ones, ourselves, and our teammates, really the unknowns of this life. And your compassionate, grounded, engaged presence is good medicine, and it heals others, including me. And I need you. So if you don't already know about the Johari window, this is something put together by Joseph and Harrington. That's where Johari comes from. A couple of psychologists that talk about the 4 quadrants of ourselves, the parts of us that are open to ourselves and others, the parts that we're blind to, that I can't see, but you can see about me, parts that I hide from you, and the parts that are unknown to both of us. And the path of integration is to make the upper left quadrant larger, but we'll never be done with exploring the unknown. This is never a place that we arrive to. It's a journey that we're on together. I feel acutely aware right now of the way my partners in this work are helping me see things about myself that I haven't been able to see before or articulate clearly. My conflicts of interest are not financial, they are evangelical. I am not an evangelical Christian, but I am an evangelist for interdisciplinary palliative care and intimate with the human condition spiritual care, and interdisciplinary team spiritual care. And intimate with the human condition comes from one of my mentors, UCSF faculty and palliative care chaplain, Naomi Sack. And I am oriented by looking for love I believe that it's everywhere. It's within us, it's between us, it's beyond us, and it's available in every situation that we find ourselves in. And I go looking for it, and I think we all can. This is the work that we get to do together. As palliative care providers, these are the 8 domains of the National Consensus Project, which you may or may not be familiar with. And we're talking about the spiritual, religious, and existential domain today. In palliative care, this is pulled from the National Consensus Project, we serve each patient and family in a manner that respects their spiritual beliefs and practices, and teams are also respectful when patients and families decline to discuss their beliefs or accept spiritual support. We have radical respect for their freedom of choice to engage with this domain or to engage with a spiritual care specialist or generalist about this part of their life. Something you may not know that is included in the guidelines, but that I love that's down on print, is palliative care professionals acknowledge their own spirituality as part of their professional role. Palliative care professionals acknowledge their own spirituality. That's all of us acknowledging our own spirituality as part of our professional role, and are provided with education and support to address each patient's and family's spirituality. So today, I want to thank the Palliative Care Education team for inviting me to help provide this education to each of us. There will be time at the end for questions, so please fill up the chat with anything that comes to mind. And also these slides will be available to share. So usually when I give this presentation last June, a little over a year ago, I got to give a palliative care grand rounds on spiritual assessment for spiritual care generalists. And this is where I ended my talk, to nurture your own inner life. But I want to start here today. This is something that came through a conversation with our palliative care lead social worker, Mike, who talked about when we ask each other to teach each other how to do what we do from our different disciplines, from our different specialties and domains, we come at it from the head. We ask for information. Can you tell me? And what we were discussing is what we're inviting people to do in this domain, and really the mental health domain, the psychological domain, is to enter into the places that we can't see, that can be hooked up to monitors. It's true, spirituality and our psychology can be studied and scanned. But mostly we enter into this domain that is the area of the unseen. And the way I believe, one of my presuppositions that you can be an excellent spiritual care provider as a generalist, and something I'm committed to as a specialist, is to nurture my own inner life. So what we're going to do today is, I just want to let you know, we are going to get where we promised to go, but we're going to start with our inner world. I'm going to tell you more about who I am, where I come from, who and what has formed me. Then we're going to talk about what is spirituality. We're going to talk about spiritual care and religious care, how they're similar, how they're different. We're going to talk about a question I hope you'll never ask again, and one that what I hope you'll do instead, and what I know you already do. And then we will get down to the nitty-gritty of spiritual screening, history, and assessment. And then we'll say goodbye for now after some Q&A. So everyone, absolutely everyone, has an inner world, including each one of us here today, including you. When I was an architect, I was very interested in exploring in my thesis the secret reverberation chambers. How could I explicitly, in the tactile world, represent the place inside of us that is described by the author of the listening book this way? Nothing is as private as the place inside you that responds to music. That place belongs to you. You are the boss of it, and the carpenter, and the janitor also. No one else can qualify what goes on in there. No one can tell you that a chord is sad or dissonant, or that a progression is unresolved, or that a passage is purple. You have to hear that for yourself. I hear him describing ownership of our own inner world, agency, and also freedom. When you listen to music, it goes where no one goes but you. It reverberates in a chamber so secret that even you can't go there without giving yourself special permission. We have to relax into access to this space within ourselves. You keep forgetting the password and then remembering it, but once you are in that space, it is utterly yours, more protected from other people than the central cells of your brain. When you listen to music, it goes where no one goes but you. It reverberates in a chamber so secret that even you can't go there without giving yourself special permission. You keep forgetting the password, then remembering it, but once you are in that space, it is utterly yours, more protected from other people than the central cells of your brain. There is a place inside all of us that is safe from religious and spiritual abuse, that is utterly and infinitely protected, at the same time that the spaces around it might be hurting. And the way that we access this space in ourselves is through awe. This is my walk to work this morning. I got here early because the electricity went out at my apartment last night and I wanted to work on my slides. And so I got here before sunrise and I was walking through the cactus garden. You can see Orion, you can see the moon. Awe is a sense of when you touch into that place, and I automatically close my eyes, but I could just as easily be like looking up and out or into the eyes of one of you and feel awe. Be in touch with something so vast that is beyond myself, that I can't fully understand, that's beyond rationalization, that's got a little bit of mystery, a little bit of wonder, but is also within me, that I inherently know and intrinsically know in my body. I'm connected. I'm connected to whatever it is I'm in awe of right now. So there are several ways that you can connect to awe. We've talked about music. We've talked about nature. This is based on the work of Dr. Keltner of the Greater Good Science Center in Berkeley, who has been studying awe for years, decades, and wrote a book about it that came out, I believe, last year. Might be earlier this year, but sometime recently. And he studied awe all over the world, I think in 27 different countries with over 2,000 people. He did interviews. And the number one source of awe is moral beauty. So this is the sense of, it's the antithesis to moral injury and moral distress, which we hear a lot about as healthcare workers. We are swimming in moral beauty. This is when we witness someone doing something with or for someone else. Could be something small, but it's kind, it's loving, and it takes our breath away. When people tell me, oh, your job must be so hard, or I could never do what you do, or any of the things we hear as palliative care providers, depending on what kind of mood I'm in, I either get really grumpy and defensive, or I get annoyed or bored, or I say, but I get to witness so many love stories. I get to see how people care for one another. My work isn't sad. It has sad moments, but overall it's joyful. And I'm in awe of the people I work with and the people that we have the privilege to care for and to witness, and they're caring for one another. We're regularly living in this space. Art can do it. Collective effervescence can do it. Spirituality can do it. Having an epiphany and awakening, like I did in my conversations with Mike last week. And then contemplating birth and death, the major transitions in life, coming into this world as we know it and leaving this world as we know it. We have a front row seat to these experiences. And if we open ourselves to it, we can be awed by it instead of weighed down. So my invitation to all of us is to nurture the awe within ourselves and beyond ourselves that we have access to. This is the source of our spiritual care. This is the source of our palliative care, is being rooted in this place, which does not deny suffering. It even includes some fear. You can be in awe of your cancer. You can be in awe of heart disease. You can also be in awe of ECMO. Like, you can be in awe of the mysteries of the things that we can't explain. Which always brings us back to our need for one another. We don't do this alone. We have moments, solitude, but we need each other. I'm just going to pause for a minute and invite you, before we get into more of the didactic part, to type into the chat, what is one of your go-to ways for experiencing awe? What is the medicine that you know works for you? Is it other people? Is it music? Is it nature? Like, if you're not driving and you have access to your chat function, just type it in. The woods, photography, nature and hiking, live music, toddlers. It's all of it. Hiking in the hills, hugging my kid, going to pray in synagogue, singing, hiking in my daughter, gathering, community. Spirituality is feeling connected to something bigger, often involves being away from devices. Yes, dancing, joy, hiking, exclamation point, community. Yeah. We know what the medicine is for us. And so just like any medical provider, part of spiritual care providing is saying, how often are you doing that? Let's set up a scheduled dose and not PRN. It works better when you do it often, even in small doses. So spirituality is the dynamic and intrinsic aspect of humanity that refers to the ways, I added the S in there, persons seek and express ultimate meaning, purpose, and transcendence, and the ways they experience their connectedness and relationship to the moment, self, to others, to society, to nature, and to the significant or the sacred. I usually am just jealous that this definition is by Dr. Bless Christina Pachalski of the George Washington Institute for Spirituality and Health. I think it's referred to as G-Wish. I'm usually really jealous of her, but recently I've been thinking about how she is the Johari window for the spiritual care specialist. Somebody outside of our specialty could see it very clearly and is helping us put words around it that other people can understand. In the same way that I need my colleagues to show me and help me come to language for what it is we're doing together. So bless her for being a part of our window. And I would, as many of you have seen that slide before and have noted, it doesn't include religion, it doesn't include God, it doesn't include prayer. These are not explicit. This is about the ways we seek connection. And so spiritual life, the inner world, is about what inspires us, like literally, we're alive because we have breath in our lungs. That's what spirit means at its root. But what gets us out of bed? What gives us that sense of meaning and purpose? The life force. What's vulnerable about us? Strong, messy, love-filled, the full spectrum of human experience and emotions, including fear, anger, sadness, shame, joy, grief. All of it is included. Everything belongs. Everything belongs. Religious specific care is just a subset. It's sacraments, rituals, ceremonies, done in community. And everything, just like family, just like human beings, we're healed in relationship, we're harmed in relationship. Religious traditions are sets of relationships and agreements between communities of people with a hierarchy. And there's the potential for harm there, and there's potential for great healing there. The same way we walk into a space and enter into an agreement with the person or persons in the room. We have to be very mindful of the power that we carry as providers. So they're related, but they're not the same thing. Please just remember that as you're walking through your days. Everybody has an inner world. Everybody can benefit from spiritual care if they want it. So pediatric chaplain John Winslow Rodriguez and the team next door define religion this way. Religion is an organized system of beliefs, practices, rituals, and symbols designed to facilitate closeness to the sacred or transcendent and to foster an understanding of one's relationship and responsibility to others living together in community. I think this is beautiful. So spiritual care providers get called when other team members or patients or their family members have a need for facilitated relationship or connection to the moment, to ourselves, to others, to nature, to the significant, and to the sacred. Something could have ruptured and it needs repair. That's the core of spiritual care. It's not just whether or not somebody is religious. That's such a small part of the work overall. An important part, a part I love, but it's just one piece. So we've talked about everybody having an inner world. Everyone deserves to be heard. And being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. I was thinking of all of the times I have witnessed spiritual care generalists and my teammates, APPs, doctors, social workers, coming in after a visit to share something that they heard with me and that they experienced with a patient. And Natalie, I don't think she's on the call, but recently somebody was sharing with her a lot of existential distress and fear of dying. And she'd had a lot of religious trauma as a child, and as many of us have been told about hell, and the phrase fear of God comes from a place. We didn't make that up on our own. I mean, we did as humans, but it's not so helpful when you're about to die and you're afraid about what's going to happen afterwards. And Natalie came and talked to me about the case, and she shared with me what she did, the questions that she asked, and wanted to know what would I do specifically as a spiritual care specialist and how would I address the religious trauma. And so we talked about that, but I also reflected back to her, like, you did it. You did the work that I would do. There is some specialist things I could do if this person stays in the hospital, but you did it. You listened her into speech. You let her articulate her fears. You responded with a loving presence. You demonstrated you weren't afraid of her fear. You normalized it, and you offered a different representation of love and companionship at the end of life. And the next time Natalie met with that person, she asked her how she was doing, and she said, I feel so much better. After talking to you, I'm in a different place. It had nothing to do with that case. That was Natalie. So remembering that everyone is worthy of love and unconditional positive regard. You know, can we keep that in mind when we're meeting with a frustrating patient? This is the place that I come from. You can see me in the middle of the picture. This is a 5-year-old future United Church of Christ minister. We just don't know when we meet people what's behind them, what's stirring in them currently, and what's ahead for them in the future. This is the paternal side of my family. This is, in the far right, my mentoring pastor, Darrell Goodwin. I left the denomination of my childhood that was not queer friendly, and that was queer harmful, I would say. And I discovered a multicultural, charismatic, radically inclusive church, Liberation Ministries, that became Liberation United Church of Christ. And I have Darrell to thank for that. And I'm sharing this with you because if you ask open-ended questions, like I'm going to give you a framework for later, this is rooted in FICA. Like, what is my faith tradition? Do I have a religious or spiritual community or practice that's important to me? And the answer is yes. I belong to a church here in Palo Alto, but I also belong to an online Buddhist Sangha. I'm also a part of a 12-step group. 12-step spirituality is huge for me. And I have a pop-up Jewish meditation group that I love to attend. So you never know until you ask what's going on inside somebody's world. And this is my chosen family today. This is my mom in the bottom left-hand corner, my first spiritual teacher and now my spiritual friend. On the bottom right is my atheist godmother. So you never know inside of a family what kind of different belief systems are going to be held in there. So my atheist witch, as she likes to call herself, garden witch godmother, me, Christian minister without an atonement theology, with a Buddhist practice and a 12-step spirituality, with a godson who is also atheist, and on his confirmation day in a Christian church got up and said, I believe in science. I think he's also a religious naturalist, and he doesn't actually say that he doesn't believe in God, so maybe agnostic. Deep connection to nature. But what I'm in service of people's spiritual and religious freedom, and that was modeled for me and my family. So we've talked about FICA, which is faith, stands for faith. Do you have a faith tradition? What were you raised with? Faith background is very different than current faith. What's listed on the census might be a very small part of what is a part of somebody's true identity or their sources of awe. Like my mom is a Christian, but she goes almost every day to the Buddhist Sangha with me now. And you wouldn't know that if she was in the hospital and you just read Christian on her census or knew she was married to a United Methodist Christian minister. So how important is this in your life? Do you have a community? And how do you want us to address or integrate what your faith, your sources of awe, your practices into our medical care? into our plan of care, and how does it influence your medical decision making? So this is called a spiritual history. People get screened when they come into the hospital. That's how they get their label on the census. Anybody can do a spiritual history. This was created at GWISH for spiritual care generalists to have some questions and a framework to hold on to when you're doing a spiritual assessment. So there's lots of different levels to spiritual care, religious care, the existential domain. You're screening, you're taking a history, then there's the deeper assessment, there's the interventions, there's referrals, and then there's assessing the outcomes. Did what I tried in my intervention, did it work? And in that story I shared about Natalie, yes. So for me, one of the things I realized talking with Mike, prepping for our presentation on the PEDS side of the house last week, was that I am assessing for spiritual freedom. This is very similar to psychological flexibility. So you can think about patients that you've met, you can think about people in your own family, you can think about patients' family members, you can think about yourself. When you hear the words religion or spirituality, like I noticed I already just like closed my eyes. Like I feel very protective of my spiritual domain. I'm willing to defend it, to fight about it. Like, I'm just like, no one is messing with this anymore. And I wonder sometimes when we experience that wall, and Mike and I have been talking about, does the wall come down and protect the head? And so it's like psychological inflexibility when it comes to the spiritual domain. Like, I cannot consider any other reality, philosophy, theology, spirituality other than what I was taught. This is it. It's locked down. You're not getting in here. Or do you protect your heart when somebody tries to enter your spiritual domain and you just go straight to your head and maybe get defensive or protective that way? Or when the wall comes down, can you just get so overwhelmed and flooded in your heart that the patient is just visually shaking from existential distress, similar to a patient we have on our census right now, or did last week? So I'm assessing for spiritual freedom. Is somebody willing to die? This is my framework: incarnate life, death, rebirth. Learned that in Christianity, tracks in Buddhism. Can someone die to an old way of being? Haven't we all been through this as we mature in life? Hopefully, if we're maturing, we have to lay down, we have to surrender to maybe some survival skills that turned into character traits that aren't serving us anymore. And do we feel free enough to lay those down and just say that actually needs to die, be returned to the earth, composted? It's actually shit and it can do something. It can have new life, but it's not a seed I want to carry into the next season, into the next planting. And if we're in that place of freedom, so much healing can happen there. So much healing can happen there. And if somebody's not ready, you can still be a healing presence. You can still help thaw some of that concretized way of being, that frozen trauma response. We can still thaw it with our loving presence. But if somebody's in a spiritual place of freedom, just where are they? Are they dying to something? Are they in a transition space where it's the unknown? Are they coming out of that unknown and they're being reborn into something that they can reach for, that they can see, that they're excited about? Are we willing to grieve with them in the death? Are we willing to sit with them in the unknown and be a guide for exploration? Are we willing to celebrate with them and meet that energy of seeking new life? And we don't get there by asking, would you like to see a chaplain? So I hope you take away a few things from this presentation. But one of them I would definitely like you to take away is to never ask this question again. Everything that we talked about before is what we're interested in. Hard to put words around. So please don't ask, would you like to see a chaplain? Most people will say no. Wouldn't you? This question doesn't feel very warm to me. To some people it is if they know what a chaplain is, but most people don't. So what I am asking us to do instead is just to listen. Listen. Assess internally, would this person benefit from a spiritual care specialist? Do they need it? And then make a referral. And let me be declined. I'm trained to be heard. I'm trained to be heard. That's nice. I hope so. I'm trained to hear no. I'm trained to respect someone's independence and freedom, to honor their choice to not engage with me or one of my peers and walk away. But let me do that. I want you to listen with your whole body being. Trust yourself, to trust your patients. Everyone has 3 teachers. This is a Buddhist teaching: an inner teacher, an outer teacher, and a secret teacher, aka life, the phenomenological world. They have a teacher inside of them that I trust. I'm going to assess if they have an outer teacher that they're aware of. And then the secret teacher of life that we all have, how is life teaching them? What is their assignment? And I can be with them and listen to them through empathy, eye contact, muscles of facial expressions, posture, affect, tone of voice, hearing the whole person. Always keeping in mind religious abuse and trauma, rampant. And so you pick up on the atmosphere, the vibe, the energy. How do I feel in my body when I'm with this person? How does it look like that person feels in their body? How does my nervous system feel with this person? Mirror neurons means they're connected. We pick up on each other. We share our vibes, which is why your calm, non-anxious, loving, passionate presence can make such a profound impact on somebody else. And why, if we're not rooted and grounded in our own inner worlds and spirituality, sources of awe and strength, somebody else's unregulated nervous system can really affect us. What's coming up in my countertransference? My bias, how's it playing into my assessment and my next step? Okay, we're to the final part, the presentation, which is assessing spiritual need through our assessment model of choice on the spiritual care services. It's certainly mine. Spiritual aim. And AIM teaches that there are 3 primary human spiritual needs: meaning and direction, self-worth and belonging, reconciliation, learning to love and be loved. We all have these. These are human spiritual needs, regardless of religious affiliation or not. And they also teach that there is a presenting self that we show to the world, that we just love to have together. And in our white body supremacy society, everything's perfect. I'm fine. There's no need for conflict. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy worried about myself, and I'm too busy worried about perfecting everything or making everything nice for everybody else. Underneath that presenting self is our vulnerability, our strength, our messiness, the love-filled. It's the full spectrum of human experience and emotions that we talked about earlier. Being hospitalized with a serious illness is often a crisis, and the presenting self cracks open. And all of a sudden, what somebody might be ashamed of or apologize for crying about is shining through. And it's the beauty of our humanity. Nothing to be ashamed of. And it's privilege to be a part of it. It is sacred, sacred ground. And crisis is not always, but it can be an opportunity for healing and transformation. These needs I have one of my best friends is a social worker, and she says, follow your need all the way down. I go to her with my vulnerabilities a lot. And one of the things I said to her recently was, how do I feel so needy? And she said, that's your medicine. Follow it all the way. Our needs are nothing to be ashamed about. They're wisdom. And they're leading us to a primary one. When I'm in crisis, do I need meaning and direction? Am I needing self-worth and belonging? Or am I needing reconciliation, learning to love and be loved? So we teach an embodied assessment. I've been saying it over and over again. Repetition's important. We just let it wash over us. What does it look like in the room? What is the person's tone, pace, type of voice? What does it smell like? Does the patient or their family offer you food? Are they trying to touch you? Are you trying to touch them? And then we're just going to take a moment and walk through this chart together. So the spiritual aim model teaches that you can assess a person's primary spiritual need within the first 5 minutes of an interaction by listening. For listening how they talk about blame, complaints, trust, needs, primary concern. What's the quality of their focus and where is it pointed? How do they speak? And what do you feel inside of yourself? I'm going to change the sketch note so that Chaplain says spiritual care providers. How do we feel? What's our self-awareness? So we'll just pick a couple of these. When you walk into a room and you're meeting with somebody, you're just building rapport. It doesn't even have to be that you're having a quote unquote spiritual conversation. Is blame not even present? Or are they blaming themselves? Do they apologize for themselves a lot? Do they say things like, I'm so stupid, or this wouldn't have happened if I, or are they other blame? Those nurses, this doctor, my doctor at my other clinic, it's everybody else. Let's skip the complaints part and go down to needs. A person with a meaning and direction need is going to be out of touch with their own needs and desires. That's going to be very foggy for them. A person with a need for self-worth and belonging, primary need, because these are all needs we all have. If their primary need is for self-worth and belonging, you're going to notice that they're focused on other people's needs. Oh, my family can't come. I'm really worried about them. I don't think they're getting enough sleep. There's just so much going on with their workplace right now. Would you call them and check in on them? Or a primary need for reconciliation might expect others to read their minds, expect others to know and meet their needs without having to ask. They kind of expect to be catered to. And then listen to their speech. How do they speak? In metaphors, images, questions, possibilities? Is it kind of, I look up because do they talk about their visions and are they trying to understand? Are they talking about the possibilities, the frameworks, the philosophies? Very theoretical. It's not really grounded. Or do they speak as a caretaker, an appreciator of others? Like, just so grateful. I'm just so grateful. Thank you. I said to somebody, are you the type of person that likes prayer in the room, or do you want me to keep you in my prayers, or like no prayer at all? She's like, it's up to you if you want to waste your time. Just like screaming self-worth and belonging. And then when you walk into the room, if you feel combative energy, anger, even if it's justified, even if it's righteous anger and not self-righteous anger, it's rebellion or pride, like you're like, ooh, something's hurting here. Something is being protected here that feels very, very vulnerable. and is causing a lot of fear. And then pay attention to how you feel. Feel foggy, confused. You feel like the person is more interested in you than they are in talking about themselves. Or are they more interested in maybe using you to deliver messages to other people? Or are they splitting the team out of a place of hurt or fear? But still, how do you feel? Once you know what a person's primary spiritual need is, then you also know how a spiritual care generalist or a specialist could show up, or how you might make a referral to me or somebody on your spiritual care team over at the Children's Hospital. I met with this person and I'm assessing a need for meaning and direction. And then you know what they really need is a guide. They need somebody who interrupts them, who brings them down from the clouds to the ground, invites them. We don't get anybody to do anything. We can invite them, come down to the ground and say, hey, all of this is really interesting, but I think this is the most important thing right now. And I'm afraid if we don't talk about it, we're going to run out of time for our session today. The self-worth and belonging, a valuer. Just with this patient that's really struggling with self-worth, I'm like, well, I have a different opinion of you than you do of yourself. I really enjoy my time with you. I value this. With a need for reconciliation, a truth teller, they need somebody who can demonstrate that we can handle their anger, that we're not afraid of them, that we're not afraid of their vulnerability, and that we have a strong spine and boundaries, and we're not afraid to engage with them that way. There's also the specialist provision of providing ritual or marking a threshold or a moment of change. When somebody has made a decision for meaning and direction, when somebody has started to value themselves, when somebody who has ruptured a relationship takes responsibility for themselves and for repairing what's been broken. I'm going to leave these slides in here so that you have reference to them if you get the slides, if you're worried about miracles. I'm not, but I'm happy to talk about them anytime. Just want you to be interested in your fellow humans. Show curiosity, ask open-ended questions. I'm going to go through these. You'll have access to all of them. You already asked them already. Ask this at the end. I never lead with this. I ask it like a doorknob question. Unless they've brought it up, I ask it on my way out. And then lean on us. Lean on your psychosocial spiritual specialists in your group for exploring your own inner world, your countertransference, your bias, your love of your patients, your boredom, your anger. Let's be in this work together. And then let's give it away. So part of spiritual practice, and this conversation is not over because we're going to have a little bit of time for questions and answers, but I want to dedicate the merit of this conversation when we're done. So if you need to leave before we get to do this, just know this is part of the practice we will be doing. That what we are doing right now, we're doing on purpose and for a purpose. And the purpose is for the benefit of all beings.